Despite being the very first person Rudo met on the ground, Enjin is still one of the most mysterious characters in Gachiakuta. So we're gonna figure out everything we can about this enigmatic cleaner. To start with, there is a lot to be said about his first appearance in the story. Enjin met Rudo in one of the 6 no-man's lands. On the ground, these places are considered to be the most dangerous polluted zones around, where just 15 minutes of exposure to the air without a mask is enough to kill someone. That is, if the sound-based trash beasts don't get to them first. Thus far, we've been to 3 out of the 6 no-man's lands. Penta, the desert no-man's land with its giant scorpion trash beasts. Tori, the jungle no-man's land, which is the most polluted of the 6 with its vine trash beast guardian. And the no-man's land they met in, which is still unnamed. And that lack of a name sticks out to me as a point of interest. Across the board, entering a no-man's land alone is believed to be a death wish. The trash beasts from such areas are considered unique and difficult for even givers to handle. When venturing into Penta, the cleaners opted to include more givers than usual on the mission. Yet Enjin was in the nameless one and totally by his lonesome. We also know for certain that he wasn't on any sort of cleaner mission. At least not one that Semiyu, their receptionist, was aware of. And she's the one who gives everyone their tasks. Not only was Enjin alone, but he absolutely dominated the local trash beasts without breaking a sweat. Although he clearly would have preferred to have kept a low profile, Enjin had no trouble destroying them. After taking down multiple in a flash, he wiped out the rest of the monsters in a single blow. Compare that to Rio, a trained killer. Even she needed backup against a far weaker horde of trash beasts. So if his position as a leader of Team Akuta wasn't evidence enough, Enjin is easily one of the strongest cleaners around. When Rudo saw all this, he wondered if it was the technology or the person that was special. The answer is both. Enjin's vital instrument is the umbrella Umbreaker, and this thing is very versatile. When it comes to combat, Enjin tends to use its bladed form, his go-to move being the downward strike Umbreaker Octo Shredder. In its standard form, Umbreaker is impressively defensive enough to protect himself and others from literal tons of falling debris. And a single hit from its standard form was strong enough to knock back Jabber a good distance away. Enjin can make Umbreaker larger and launch forward with it at crazy speeds like a rocket. It could even drill through the inside of a colossal trash beast with ease. He's used it to float in the air and can carry several people at once, even if it's not very comfortable. It's also a pretty convenient way to surf. Enjin kept himself from being pulled into a trash storm by piercing the ground with it. By attaching a leash to Umbreaker, Enjin can use it like a destructive spinning top. In terms of limitations, Enjin acknowledged the fact that his treasure wouldn't be strong enough to take down the Tori trash beast by its lonesome. It's also not very well suited for ranged combat. When Enjin explained how the quality of vital instruments works, Umbreaker was presented as a visual aid. So it's safe to assume that it's a good example of a high quality object. And if nothing else, by virtue of being older than most of the other cleaners, Enjin has been able to spend more time cultivating and mastering his treasure than most others. He also made it clear that the powers of a jinki reflect the experience and ideology of their user. Which is to say that Enjin himself is a very flexible guy who is as protective as he is dangerous. Umbrellas are also very noticeable and usually stand out, which aligns with Enjin's personal philosophy of being the banner that brings people together. But all of this is still very far from Enjin's best, as according to him, he's the best at pulling his punches. When Enjin actually wants to be flashy, it's pretty easy for him to do. Now, Gachiakuta, like most shonen stories, likes to play around with mythology from various sources. In the case of Umbreaker, I'm of the impression that it is a nod to Japanese folklore, namely Kasa Obake, which is a type of yokai. They're typically described as being umbrellas with a single eye and various limbs. Kasa Obake are the most well-known yokai of an inanimate object. But unlike most other famous yokai, which were once considered to be real eyewitness accounts, these guys were always considered to be a made-up story. And as we'll see, that's a whole lot like Enjin's situation. Kasa Obake are also a type of Tsukumogami, which is an otherwise ordinary object that's become animated due to many decades of neglect. So vital instruments are effectively the inverse of this. If anything, that seems to be a pretty apt description of trash beasts. Now, thanks to August Stilza being everyone's personal stylist, we also know that a cleaner's mask is a solid representation of them. And by virtue of being the first mask we ever see, it would make sense for Enjin's to be especially distinct. Over the eye area, we can see crosses. And on his clothes, Enjin also has a pin with very similar visuals. There should be no doubt that the character designs in this series are very intentional. Enjin has a total of 3 pins, one of the cleaner's insignia, one of an umbrella like his treasure, and one similar to his mask. The umbrella one also has a handle that resembles a scythe. We've yet to see anything like this from Unbreaker just yet. But with the creator of this series, Kei Urana, being the spiritual successor to the creator of Soul Eater, Atsushi Okubo, I'd expect nothing less. In the case of crosses, they tend to point towards medical aid or crucifixion. Although Enjin's no medic, Asia Stilza, the only giver with healing powers amongst the cleaners, is a member of his team. He also came to Rudo's rescue when he would have otherwise died. He also offered salvation to both Ryo and Zanka. But as we'll see, Enjin is no hero. The pin appears to have stitches in place of a mouth. This seems to point towards pain-induced silence, which aligns with the fact that Enjin doesn't like to talk about his past. The most substantial thing we know about it is that Enjin isn't actually his name. It comes from an ancient language and means person who connects others. This name was given to him by someone he believes he owes everything to. While giving advice to Rudo, Enjin admitted that in the past, there was someone there to help him recognize his flaws. So it seems as though Enjin is an inheritor of some sort. Thus far, whenever Enjin's past is mentioned, his face, and by extension, facial expressions, are cleverly obscured or hidden by the paneling or circumstances. Those masks sure are convenient, huh? When mentioning the person he owes his life to, we see Enjin's jinki instead of his face. So it may be included in this. But perhaps more importantly, Enjin appears to have inherited his outlook and path. More on that soon. Whatever the case, Enjin seems to hate his real name and was pretty upset when the broker brought it up. The broker being the whimsical and super old being who knows an absurd amount of information. It's pretty clear that before helping Rudo ask the broker a question, Enjin had already met the man, which is to say that he's likely to have sought an answer of his own, and therefore had to pay a suitable price in exchange. In regards to his name, we know that a jinki is being used to the fullest when the user's name is written on it. And according to Grounder's script, the characters on Unbreaker can be read as Enjins. With that being said, I'm of the impression that honesty and self-realization are very important. So having his actual name on the object is likely to be even better. As long as Enjin avoids his real name, he probably won't be able to be at full power. For that to be necessary, I imagine Enjin will need to hit a wall and be desperate enough to face his past. As an adult, Enjin is self-aware enough to recognize that even he still has plenty of room left for growth. After all, it's only after you recognize your own weakness that you can get stronger. So it's only a matter of time before he takes the plunge. But on that note, why does it seem like Enjin expected Rudo to be plunged down to the ground? Again, we have to ask ourselves, why was Enjin there alone? After calling Enjin's discovery of Rudo a miracle, some of you asked the guy what the heck he was doing there in the first place. And the cleaner just chalked it up to a walk and his business. Looking back, everything about Enjin's first encounter with Rudo was very suspicious. First of all, Enjin was watching the kid from a distance for a good while before engaging. While Rudo desperately fought for his life, Enjin casually sat on a pile of trash. And that's despite the extermination of trash beasts in the defense of human lives being the general expectation of a cleaner. And although Enjin was surprised by what he saw, it wasn't the fact that a kid in strange clothing was in a no man's land without a mask. It was the fact that Rudo was actually trying to fight the trash beasts. Really, it was Rudo's anger and revenge-fueled purpose that drove him to do so. He refused to be killed by the monsters, and reacted. But like we mentioned earlier, these trash beasts only react to sound. Rudo's initial fall made them react, and his coughing made them react. But otherwise, these creatures were quite blind and lost track of him very quickly. It was only after Rudo began shouting and throwing things that they attacked him again. And while you could argue that pollution also threatened to end his life, again, that would take 15 minutes to be lethal. Rudo was only there for a handful of minutes at best, which is to say that Rudo's life wasn't in any real danger outside of his final stand. At least not from Enjin's perspective. In either case, Enjin could save Rudo's life and place the kid in his debt immediately. And ideally, Rudo would have passed out and Enjin would have collected him without any trouble. And if Rudo had just kept his mouth shut, the trash beasts wouldn't have noticed them. But because of these two unforeseen variables, Enjin was forced to use and reveal more of his strength than he usually would. While fighting the Pentascorpions with the other cleaners, Enjin claimed to have missed a few with his attack, and left it up to Rudo to finish them off. But knowing how good Enjin is at holding back, and the fact that he wiped out far stronger trash beasts without help and didn't even break a sweat, I doubt he was telling the truth here. Even besides his jinki, while Jabber and Rio were going at it on top of a moving vehicle, Enjin called them monsters and referred to himself as a mere mortal. Meanwhile, Enjin's reflexes were sharp enough for him to dodge a baseball from Gil that came from his blind side and broke through a wooden stage. So we're talking about speeds of about 300 miles per hour or more here. Furthermore, isn't it strange that Enjin wasn't moved by Rudo being a spherite in the slightest? Living spherites are supposed to be impossibly rare. Even dead, their bodies are said to be worth their weight in gold. So why wouldn't Enjin care? It seems to me that Enjin was expecting Rudo. Not only that, but what the cleaner hopes to gain by fostering the boy is worth more to him than all the money in the world. And aside from his jinki, the only thing that could reasonably fit the bill would be the fulfillment of the task his mysterious benefactor gave him. Despite the sphere always being on the move, Enjin later revealed that its movements are fairly predictable. And while uncommon, being dropped to the world below seems to be a traditional punishment on the sphere. So grounders, especially cleaners, wouldn't be unfamiliar with the results. Somehow, Enjin knew that Rudo would experience this and managed to survive. It's said that Enjin's hunches are usually spot on. And in regards to Rudo, Enjin totally expected the boy to possess tremendous amounts of energy. Although, he was genuinely surprised by the fact that Rudo could use multiple objects. So while Enjin knows a lot more than he lets on, he is still in the dark about many things. Either way, he was delighted by this development. Since recruiting Rudo, Enjin's behavior as a cleaner has shifted. Despite being the leader of the team he belongs to, Zanka noted that it was quite unusual for Enjin to contact him over Choker. Yet Enjin did so for the sake of having Zanka show Rudo the ropes when it comes to vital instruments. There is no doubt that Enjin is aware of how much Zanka idolizes him. While Zanka was with them, Enjin described him as the giver who's best at handling vital instruments, a compliment that actually moved the boy to tears. But after seeing the other cleaners in action, I've yet to get that impression at all. Maybe specifying that to Team Akuta would be more accurate. But really, why would Enjin need someone else to train Rudo in that department? Enjin himself is clearly far more adept and is the source of a lot of our jinki knowledge. I'd say it looks like Enjin would prefer to keep his own abilities under wraps as much as he possibly can. Despite this, Enjin and Rudo have tended to be together, to the point where Enjin wasn't going on missions like he usually would for the sake of being with Rudo. Even when Rudo went on a mission with Remlin and the other kids, Enjin was secretly keeping an eye on their every movement. This is very strange behavior. It's not like Rudo is the first person Enjin has recruited. Yet Semiyu couldn't help but pick up on the oddities. At the end of the most serious conversation we've seen Enjin have with her, she questioned why he cared about a random stranger like Rudo to begin with. And that's something we didn't get an answer to. Enjin and Semiyu are roughly the same age and appear to be pretty close. Enjin's relationships with his fellow cleaners may be described as master and students, peers, and in the case of the boss, superior and subordinate. Really, Semiyu is the only one who comes across as simply being Enjin's friend. Interestingly, the most personal conversation Enjin had with Rudo was related to his preferred type of woman, something that he describes as being one of his flaws, and something he's unable to hide about himself. Mind you, this is coming from the character who pretty much hides everything about himself. Enjin loves women who are smarter than him, with nice curves, who are a bit naughty, and very forgiving. We see that he's a big fan of 2 Lily. That lady definitely has curves, and certainly has a naughty side based on the prize she gave Rudo. But she's also a total airhead. Really, Enjin's ideal woman is a pretty apt description of Semiyu. She's very smart and calls Enjin an idiot all the time. She's gorgeous and quite curvy. She reads dirty magazines and erotic books for fun. And despite her keen sight allowing her to pick up on a whole lot, she is by no means a judgmental person. Enjin also tends to have silly reactions whenever she calls him over choker, so it seems like he's into her. Enjin was also there with the boss when Semiyu first got the job as receptionist, and in those days, she had long hair. Semiyu also claims that Enjin is always slacking off and chasing after women. To me, that sounds like a convenient cover. This series has no problem covering mature themes, and I'm sure the creator would love an excuse to draw more beautiful women. But not once have we actually seen that sort of behavior from Enjin. And clearly, if Tamsi is anything to go by, cleaners can certainly live double lives and keep major secrets without being discovered. Now, considering the differences in Enjin's behavior that Semiyu was able to notice, I find moments when Enjin was absent to be very fascinating. While Rudo was on a Spearite-related mission that led him into Jabber's trap, Enjin wasn't there. Narratively, I believe that Jabber, for all his strength, wouldn't have been a match for Enjin, so having the leader of Team Akuta there would have removed the stakes and eventual rivalry between Jabber and Zanka. But canonically, Semiyu originally planned on sending Enjin with them, but he was elsewhere on another job. Thus far, nothing has pointed towards Semiyu being the source of any scheduling conflicts, so if Enjin was assigned to a mission beyond her purview, then such a thing could have only come from the boss himself. After his run-in with the raider Bundas, Bro Santa has begun to question the boss's true intentions. And contextually, Enjin's hesitation to respond, followed by his gaslighting dismissal, points towards a deeper awareness than he lets on. During their meeting, the boss removed Rudo's choker before providing any sensitive information. This indicated that he knew someone was listening, something that Enjin seems to have also been aware of even before the broker told Rudo. Like we mentioned before, it was unusual for Enjin to reach out to Zanka over choker. Thanks to his hijacking of the choker network, Maimo used information from private conversations against the cleaners. But for Enjin, the best Maimo had was the fact that he's too secretive to even tell his name to the people who trust him the most. So in all the years that Enjin has worn a choker, not once has he mentioned his real name or anything at all related to his past. That is an absurd level of secrecy. Between his standout umbrella and very noticeable tattoos, Enjin is a pretty recognizable guy. So it's a bit strange that nobody from his past was able to claim or mention him in any substantial way. Either they're all dead, or he's totally unrecognizable compared to how he appeared in the past. Maybe it's both. Almost everyone in this story has some trash in their past. So Enjin's must really be special for his to be treated so delicately. After removing Rudo's choker, the boss told him the real reason why the cleaners exist, that they were formed for the sake of solving the mysteries of their world, something that only a small handful of people are aware of, even among the cleaners. Frankly, if the boss decided to tell this to Rudo, then there's no way that Enjin wasn't already aware, especially given the fact that he was a team leader and a member even before their receptionist. When the boss mentioned the various different reasons why the cleaners joined their ranks, Enjin wasn't shown. Conveniently, that means we can probably use his exclusion to create a list of objectives Enjin did not join the cleaners to fulfill. He's not necessarily a member for the sake of eradicating the trash beasts or protecting people from them. He's not there for power or a sense of belonging. He's not there to make a living, help his family, or even simply to have fun. Ultimately, Regardless of why they've decided to become cleaners, the boss admits to using them all for the sake of his own objectives. Something that, like Enjin, he is apparently doing for the sake of a friend. He's even willing to risk Semiyu going blind if it means being better informed about the events to come. Despite confessing his intentions to Rudo, based on his reaction to Rudo's ability to initiate giver status in others, Corvus clearly knows a lot more than he is willing to share. Even Enjin, who we may assume knows more than most, doesn't know what the boss's vital instrument is or what kind of power it has. Either way, there is no doubt that Enjin has an agenda related to Rudo, and is using people around him in a similar fashion. Before commenting himself, Enjin got very serious when Rudo's grounder lineage was mentioned, and this was presented to us while Remlin claimed that it was a total miracle. And when Bro Santa reacted strongly to the revelation of the Undertaker being Rudo's ancestor, Enjin remained seated and simply lit a cigarette with his eyes closed. Enjin isn't some nonchalant and unexcitable cool guy. If he were unaware of this, his reaction would be very different. Although he clearly doesn't know all the details, Enjin is far more informed than Rudo knows. Beneath the mural representation of the first spellcaster, Makaka Aikol, are 4 symbols that each represent one of his best friends. And aside from the Undertaker's Watchman series symbol, I can't help but believe that one of them resembles Enjin's umbrella, while another looks like the eye of the boss's tattoo. Enjin was actually very fond of the previous spellcaster, Gob. But when he learned that Gob died from pollution due to not wearing a mask, Enjin's expression wasn't one of grief like the others. And this is despite the entire page effectively being dedicated to his reaction. The most he did was stoop down. But we also saw a shadow suddenly overtake his face. Tamsi told Rudo not to get upset since people die like that all the time on the ground. But Tamsi is the last person you'd want to get emotional advice from. And despite Gob's significance, we've yet to get a clear look at his face. Even as a corpse, Gob was totally covered. Remember, this guy provided the cleaners with charms all the time. So I think it's worth considering the possibility that Gob may have previously been working with Enjin and Corvus, but has now faked his death and gone rogue. After all, Gob did have a tendency to disappear. And if a body which he could certainly dress up wasn't enough to sell it, then surely leaving his jinki behind would get the job done. And at that, aside from his jinki, Enjin also seems to possess some sort of extra insurance or last resort to help him in a pinch. Something inside of his bag that he believed to be capable of sinking a colossal trash beast in an instant. And the only other time this bag was focused on was a seemingly minor panel when Enjin was told about Gob's fate. So whatever it is, may be related to the spellcaster in some way. Enjin isn't a bleeding heart. He can't get angry on behalf of a random person he's never met like Rudo can. While he may be somewhat adverse to separating someone from their jinki, he couldn't relate to Rudo feeling bad for destroying one in the midst of battle. Enjin has repeatedly warned Rudo that on the ground, information and help are not given for free. While the broker may be more obvious, generally, there is always a price. Yet Enjin has given and done a lot for Rudo. Originally, payment was framed as Rudo joining the cleaners, and that seems to be the gift that just keeps on giving for the givers. But it also seems like the full context of Enjin's investment has yet to bear fruit. With such strong intentions for Rudo, it would only make sense for Enjin to be very adverse to anything getting in his way. As previously stated, Enjin's hunches tend to be right. So how is it that he could be so wrong about Amo and Fu? For the most part, he's been pretty against their involvement with the cleaners. Yet they've proven themselves to be very useful and extremely honest. If anything, you'd think that they'd be a lot more trustworthy than some random Spherite. After all, most grounders revile and vehemently hate Spherites for all their trash dumping. So I get the feeling that Enjin's real hunch is that there'll be trouble for his plans. In the case of Amo, she really doesn't like Enjin. Her mental instability may incline characters and even readers to overlook the depths of her sentiments. For starters, Enjin has made comments about how Amo dresses on more than one occasion, something that, aside from being rude, is especially vexing for a victim of sexual abuse. Aside from that, Amo can tell that Enjin is very deceptive. He'll say whatever he needs for the sake of getting what he wants from someone, which again is very upsetting and especially unsettling behavior. She's decided not to hate him for Rudo's sake, but is pretty much bound to oppose him if it means protecting Rudo. And since she's a member of Team Front, she is not someone Enjin is in charge of, or will be able to keep a close eye on. During their first encounter, Enjin was swiftly knocked out. This was pretty much a narrative necessity, since Amo's ability can force others to face unsavory aspects of their past. As for Fu, he's taken a liking to Amo since she seems to be the only cleaner who's willing to consistently order him around. So if Amo tells him to do something that is contrary to Enjin's goals, there is no doubt that Fu would obey. And that kid is crazy strong. But more than just that, his jinki he has a totally different personality, and that makes him somewhat dangerously unpredictable. As a master-coded character, the story can't afford to have Enjin going all out too soon. Preserving a veil of mystery and intrigue is a great way to keep him interesting and engaging for both the audience and the creator. The most well-written characters tend to be complicated, and this is very much the case with Enjin. Him feeling so indebted to the person who changed his life inclines me to believe that it must have been really awful before then. When Rudo asked about bad people being givers, Enjin paused before responding. While saying that not all humans are good people and not all humans can take care of things, he repeatedly tapped the handle of his jinki with his face being hidden. So there is definitely something there. Generally, a name is something a person receives from their parents. So for Enjin to reject his own, it's likely that he rejects his parentage as well. Thus far, we've yet to encounter a true jinki thief, so perhaps that could be an interesting angle for Enjin. Notably, Enjin has a huge scar on the side of his head, but thanks to Follow, we know that Aishia can heal scars. So the fact that it's still there must be intentional, something Enjin won't talk about that he can't afford to forget. But with all that being said, Enjin isn't evil. Although he expected Rudo's arrival, I don't get the feeling that he was in cahoots with Tamsi when it came to the death of Regto. But that's not to say that Rudo won't be under that impression eventually. In his use of Rudo, it does seem like Enjin is wrestling with an increasing sense of guilt. It's much easier to use a spherite when you don't know them and can lump them in with the rest. But Enjin knows Rudo, and Rudo's belief in him is unwavering. Whatever relationship Enjin had with his benefactor is presumably something that is now being fostered between himself and Rudo. When Enjin suggested that they seek out Amo for more information on crossing the border, Rudo was uncomfortable. He expressed the fact that he doesn't want Amo to think that they only care about her because she has information. That statement made Enjin's eyes widen, while the rest of his face was obscured. Because of course, that is the same situation he now finds himself in with Rudo. But when Enjin admitted that he only cares about her for information, Rudo comically questioned what kind of turd face would do that. Just like the reveal of Enjin's past, it's only a matter of time before Rudo discovers Enjin's exploitation. And that is sure to rock their relationship and the trajectory of their paths. And if you enjoyed the video, then you'll definitely want to stick around for more, because we are only just getting started with this series. And there is a lot more that I am very excited to discuss. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.